For more than a decade, Gal Gadot has occupied one of the most puzzling positions in modern Hollywood. She is routinely cast in massive, high-budget productions, handed the keys to major franchises, and paid salaries that rival those of A-list male co-stars. And yet, with nearly every new release, the same question resurfaces across social media, film Twitter, and YouTube comment sections. Is Gal Gadot actually a good actress? This question didn't arise from a single weak scene or one poorly received film. It has followed her career for years, reappearing with each new project across genres: superhero blockbusters, glossy action thrillers, ensemble mysteries, and even animated features. What keeps the debate alive isn't simple dislike or petty nitpicking, but a growing sense of confusion. Many audiences aren't just reacting to what they see on screen, they're trying to reconcile it with the sheer scale of investment behind it. Hollywood rarely pours hundreds of millions of dollars into franchises over and over again without a compelling reason. When that reason doesn't feel obvious to viewers, the conversation shifts from opinion to investigation. If performances consistently raise questions instead of confidence, the mystery becomes less about whether the criticism is fair and more about why the industry continues to double down. The latest Snow White adaptation didn't just revive the debate, it crystallized it. Rather than focusing on the film's visuals, direction, or script, much of the discourse fixated on Gal Gadot's portrayal of the evil queen. Critics repeatedly described the performance as stiff, exaggerated in the wrong moments, or strangely vacant where authority, menace, and presence were supposed to live. The evil queen was meant to project controlled danger and effortless authority, yet the performance often felt detached, as though it existed alongside the scene rather than within it. What stood out was that critics didn't frame this as a sudden dip in quality or an unfortunate misstep. No one was asking where Gal Gadot's talent had gone. Instead, reviewers noted how closely this portrayal matched a pattern they believed they had already seen across multiple films. That framing matters, because it shifts the criticism from disappointment to recognition, suggesting continuity rather than decline. There's an irony at the center of Gadot's career. Her most beloved role, Wonder Woman, is also the one that most effectively masked her limitations. In the first Wonder Woman film, Diana is written as an outsider, unfamiliar with human customs, emotionally reserved, and socially awkward. Her stiffness and unconventional line delivery weren't flaws within that context. They were features. At the time, many viewers read her performance as deliberate, interpreting it as an immortal warrior slowly learning empathy in a chaotic human world. But hindsight has softened that generosity. When the same emotional flatness appears again and again, regardless of character or genre, it stops feeling like a creative choice and starts to feel like a constraint. Moments meant to communicate grief, urgency, or fury often lean on volume rather than depth. The words are present, the intensity is raised, but the inner life, the emotion that should flicker behind the eyes, often feels absent. Acting opposite stronger performers only sharpens the contrast, and over time, that contrast has become one of the most consistent and telling patterns in Gadot's filmography. When Gal Gadot shares the screen with stronger performers, Pedro Pascal, Chris Pine, Ben Affleck, Kenneth Branagh, the contrast becomes hard to ignore. These actors work in micro-expressions, vocal modulation, and emotional rhythm, adjusting moment to moment as scenes unfold. Gadot, by comparison, often relies on a single facial register and line readings that feel rehearsed rather than lived in. This isn't about accent or English fluency. She has spoken English since childhood and has spent decades working in English-speaking environments. The limitation isn't pronunciation. It's emotional specificity. Great actors don't simply deliver lines. They listen, react, and recalibrate in real time. Too often, Gadot's performances suggest she's waiting for her cue rather than responding organically to the scene. Even voice acting, which removes physical presence entirely, fails to mask the issue. In fact, it exposes it. Voice acting demands pure emotional communication through tone, pacing, and inflection alone, and this is where the gap becomes most apparent. In animated roles, moments of danger or intensity frequently sound oddly calm or disconnected from the animation itself. Lines meant to land with urgency or force arrive flat, draining scenes of momentum. Voice acting is unforgiving. There's no costume, lighting, or spectacle to lean on. When the emotional current isn't there, it becomes immediately obvious. And yet, the question persists. Why does Hollywood keep casting her? The answer lies in the reality that acting ability is only one factor in a far larger equation, and often not the most decisive one. Gal Gadot aligns neatly with several priorities studios value above almost everything else. She has undeniable movie star presence, a tall, athletic silhouette, and an instantly recognizable image that fits seamlessly into superhero and action cinema, where visual symbolism often matters as much as performance. She also performs strongly in international markets, a critical advantage in an industry now driven more by global box office returns than domestic audiences alone. Beyond that, she has built a reputation for professionalism, showing up prepared, avoiding controversy, and being easy to market, which makes her a low-risk investment for large-scale productions. Her breakout casting as Wonder Woman under Zack Snyder only strengthened that position. Snyder's emphasis on stylized, mythic imagery over naturalistic acting aligned perfectly with her strengths. Once that role proved profitable, momentum did the rest. Studios rarely reverse course after a successful association. Instead, they reinforce it, choosing familiarity over reassessment. The machine keeps moving forward, even if the underlying performance remains static. That context is what made reports of Gadot earning roughly $20 million for Red Notice, the same figure paid to Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson. So jarring. The reaction wasn't rooted in opposition to gender pay equity. Most audiences support leading actresses earning the same as their male counterparts when box office performance justifies it. The confusion was practical rather than ideological. Salaries at that level traditionally reflect proven audience draw, repeat ticket sales, and a clear ability to anchor a film's success. In Gadot's case, the compensation felt disconnected from those established metrics, raising questions not about fairness, but about how Hollywood now defines value. Viewers weren't arguing that Gal Gadot deserved less by default. They were asking what exactly justified the valuation. The frustration stemmed from a perceived mismatch between cost and contribution, between paycheck and performance. That gap is what pushed the discussion beyond industry trivia and into a broader critique. Is she the worst actress in Hollywood? I know, and that distinction matters. Hollywood has produced far worse performances than anything Gadot has delivered. The difference isn't qualitative so much as structural. Actors who are truly disastrous rarely receive second chances, let alone repeated opportunities to lead blockbuster franchises. They fade quickly, pushed to the margins, or forgotten entirely. Gadot, by contrast, remains firmly planted at the highest budget tier, and that persistence is what makes her case so fascinating. She occupies a peculiar middle ground, competent enough to function on screen, charismatic enough to sell an image, yet consistently limited in emotional depth. Her performances don't collapse scenes, but they rarely elevate them either. She isn't catastrophically bad, she's predictably flat. In an industry that thrives on memorability, that kind of consistency becomes its own anomaly. The pattern grows clearer when Gadot is compared to actors who once carried similar criticisms. Kristen Stewart spent years dismissed as monotone or emotionally vacant, largely shaped by early franchise roles that rewarded restraint and minimalism. But when Stewart pursued projects that demanded vulnerability, risk, and transformation, the narrative shifted. Films like Personal Shopper and Love Lies Bleeding revealed an actor capable of nuance, discomfort, and real emotional presence. The criticism dissolved because the evidence changed. With Gadot, the evidence hasn't. Across genres, directors, and production scales, her performances remain strikingly uniform. The delivery doesn't deepen, the emotional range doesn't expand, and the ceiling never seems to rise. Beneath that stagnation, not one bad role or a single misstep is what keeps the conversation alive. And if you enjoy unpacking pop culture beyond the hype, this is exactly the kind of story worth paying attention to.